Okay, excellent. All right, well, good afternoon from St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you for joining us. My name is Denise Faulkner, and I'm the marketing coordinator with the School of Graduate Studies. I also have with me today Dr. Ann Dorwood, the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies in the Faculty of Medicine, and we are also expecting one of the representatives from the Grenfell campus to join us shortly. But at this point, I want to go ahead and offer Dr. Dorwood the opportunity to present a little bit about the programs and possibilities available through the Faculty of Medicine. And once it is, we have shared about all the different programs available. We will be available to answer your questions afterwards. If you'd like, you may go ahead and drop in either the Q&A panel or the chat box any questions you have about programs being offered through the Faculty of Medicine, or if you just have general admissions questions that you'd like to direct to myself here as a representative of the School of Graduate Studies. So I'm going to go ahead now and cue the presenter. Okay, I think we flipped it over, so take it away.
Thank you, Denise, so much. Hi, everybody online. My name is Dr. Ann Dorwood, and I'm currently the Associate Dean in the Faculty of Medicine. So I am in charge of all of the graduate students here in the Faculty of Medicine. Typically, that's around 300 on average, and we have 10 graduate programs. And I'm going to share a couple slides with you just to help illustrate what we have on offer, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. How does that look, Denise? Is that visible for everyone?
Yes, my apologies. I didn't realize I was muted.
Oh, no, that's great. I saw a pop-up blocker and I thought it might be in the way.
No, it's all clear.
Wonderful. Well, I created a few slides for everyone just to help illustrate the programs in medicine. And I took this from our orientation package and tried to modify it appropriate to this audience where you might be interested in anything that we have to offer in medicine. This is a little bit of a busy slide, but what I want to emphasize is that we have a large complement of faculty members, I should say, professors in the Faculty of Medicine who fall under two primary divisions, so administrative divisions in the faculty, one called Community Health and Humanities, or CHH, and one called Biomedical Sciences, or BMS. And generally speaking, the 10 programs that we offer in the Faculty of Medicine are distributed equally across these two administrative divisions. And I'm just going to read out the names of the programs. So for the Community Health and Humanities Division, they host the Applied Health Services Research Program, the Health Ethics Program, which is the Master of Health Ethics, Master of Public Health, and this might be the Population and Public Health stream or the Nutrition and Dietetics stream, as well as the Clinical Epidemiology stream. There's also a degree program in Community Health and Humanities. And on this slide, you would see the name of faculty members who are the current leads for the programs, should you have very program-specific questions. And this can all be found on our Office of Research and Graduate Studies homepage in the Faculty of Medicine. I'll share that shortly. In the Division of Biomedical Sciences, we have 5 sort of lab-based, if you had to split them up, this is really like a lab-based program, where you can specialize in human genetics and genomics, cancer and development, cardiovascular and renal sciences, immunology and infectious diseases, or neurosciences. And again, there are faculty leads for these programs should you have any specific questions. Just to say that both clinical epidemiology and community health and humanities also offer a diploma in these subject areas. But all of the areas listed here offer a Master of Science in Medicine. The master's degree, of course, in public health is a Master of Public Health, and for health ethics, it's a Master of Health Ethics. For PhD, students interested in the PhD, that can be obtained in clinical epidemiology, community health and humanities, and all 5 of the biomedical sciences related programs, the human genetics, cancer development, cardiovascular and renal science, immunology and infectious disease, and neuroscience. So depending on the pathway, you can achieve a diploma, a master's degree, or a PhD, depending on the topic area. And students do transfer, a percentage of the time. If they start at a master's level, they can transfer to a PhD program, if the project and the situation are all, conducive to that transfer. We are very lucky in the Faculty of Medicine that we have a complimentary satellite office to help students navigate all aspects of their program. We have full staff support. There's a long list of people named here. But either for research interests or just administration of programs, we have staff here who can work through HR issues, stipend issues. We have internal awards as well as navigating awards offered through the School of Graduate Studies or the tri-agencies. So we are on the 2nd floor of the Faculty of Medicine building in Suite 2M409, and we're all in person now, which is a really nice change from the past year. I often advise students to, if they want to get to know Memorial, they need to know many circles around them in terms of where to find out information and ask questions. And as I've been trying to highlight, the Faculty of Medicine building here, shown from the front entrance, does have all of the complement of supervisors that can supervise students in graduate programs, as well as faculty advisors. For instance, advisors would be relevant to the diploma programs. We have those lead program coordinators that I had lists of there forward. We have our own library in the health sciences building, and so there are HS librarians that are often helping students with their programs. We have our office that I've already described, as well as the division staff. So both divisions have staff that are involved in supporting supervisors and students throughout their projects. And I will mention that we have a medical graduate student society that has a big leadership role in the Faculty of Medicine if that kind of leadership activity interests students, as well as peer mentorship. We're very much involved in peer-peer mentorship. And I'm sure that School of Graduate Studies has a lot to offer in terms of policies and procedures for moving through the graduate programs. They also offer a really intensive professional development program called EDGE, and they're our liaison with the Graduate Student Union of the university. And it's not an easy read, but there's a lot of really good information in the Memorial University calendar for individual graduate programs and important dates and deadlines that are important to students. And we can help you navigate any of that. As I mentioned, we do have a health sciences library that's part of the Memorial University library system. And the public service librarians do offer service to students with literature reviews and that kind of thing. We've just had a refresh of the executive of the Medical Graduate Student Society, and the current president is Chelsea Crosley, and they can be followed on Facebook and Instagram. We also have a general safety and lab safety research support here in the Faculty of Medicine, including the medical labs, the anatomy labs, and general research support in case you're involved in a laboratory-based program. And I just want to keep it short to give an overview and to help give students the opportunity to ask any specific questions they might have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Dorad. Before we start taking any questions, I want to take the opportunity to welcome Dr. Kelly Voden, who is the Associate Vice President of Research and Graduate Studies at our lovely Grenfell campus. Welcome, Dr. Voden.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for being a bit late due to technical difficulties, but pleased to be here.
Awesome. All right, so I just want to confirm whether or not you do have a slide deck that you'd like to present so I can make those privileges available.
Sure, I'll put a couple of slides up. Yeah,
Excellent. All right, so I'm just going to pass the presentation capabilities to you. And then once you're done, we will open for questions. So you may take it away. Thank you so much, Dr. Dorad.
okay. All right, share. Let's see if I can get this to work. PowerPoint. Okay, here we go. Now, hit the full slide from current slide. Okay. So we have a growing suite of programs at Grenfell campus. Our first graduate program was 9 years ago, with our Master of Arts in Environmental Policy. And now we have 5 active programs, which are listed here, as well as, well, actually 6, including the PhD, a master's and PhD in Boreal Ecosystem and Agricultural Sciences. And we have a couple of others coming as well, which I can tell you about. So our Master of Arts in Environmental Policy is a unique program. There aren't very many environmental policy programs across the country, so we have a tremendous amount of interest in this program. It offers a 1-year and a 2-year option, so a research paper option and a thesis option. It also includes an internship element, which is quite popular with students for both the 1-year and 2-year stream. The graduate officer for that program is Dr. Paul Foley. So if anyone's interested, you can put question or wants more contact information, you can put questions in the chat and I can give you his email address or get back to you. We have a Master's of Fine Arts as well, which again is a unique program where people do much of their work in their own studios, in their own home communities, but also spend an intensive period at Grenfell campus working with our faculty and meeting and engaging with other students in the Master of Fine Arts program. Our first cohort from that program just graduated and we're into year 3 of that program. We have a brand new Master of Science in Applied Geomatics program, which our first students will be starting just in January. And that's also a unique program in conjunction with the College of North Atlantic. So people do their 1-year GIS training at the College of North Atlantic and then work with faculty members on a thesis related to the applied geomatics and its use in the 2nd year of their master's program. And then our second master's program was the Master of Science in Boreal Ecosystems and Agricultural Sciences, and we've just started our first cohort of the PhD in that Boreal Ecosystems and Agricultural Sciences program. I should say the Master of Fine Arts, the graduate officer is Dr. Ingrid Percy, so you can, again, I can provide you information for her, contact information for her. The Master of Science Applied Geomatics and both the PhD and Masters in Boreal Ecosystem and Agricultural Sciences, or BEAS as we refer to it. The graduate officer is Dr. Mumtaz Chima. And finally, we have a PhD program that's in its 2nd year now. Our first PhD program is in transdisciplinary sustainability. The graduate officer for that program is Dr. Garrett Richards. And that's again a unique program where students tackle applied sustainability problems as part of their PhD. The transdisciplinary nature of it means that it's interdisciplinary. So the supervisory committee would include at least 2 supervisors from distant disciplines, as well as a partner. So the transdisciplinary element includes working with partners outside of academia on their PhD program and project. So that may be industry, government, Indigenous community partners, NGOs, for example. So there's a range. We have 16 students in that program already, and they're working with a range of different partners on their PhD projects. Coming up, a Master's of Management, which is going to be an online program that's been approved already. Just working because it is a distance program, working on the courses for that program. So we were hoping for September 2022 now, but I think that may be a bit delayed. So let us just get in touch if you're interested in the Master of Management, and we'll make sure you're in touch with the graduate officer there, Janice Turner, about the timelines. And there's also a Master of Arts in Applied Literary Studies and a Master of Fine Arts in Theater in the works. So if you're interested in more information, you can go to the Grenfell campus website, and there is a graduate programs page. So that's Grenfell, www.grenfell.mun.ca, where you can find out more. You can also see here on the slide, Nada Simmons, her email address in the text there, and simmons@grenfell.mun.ca. She's certainly our key contact person for graduate students on campus in terms of services for graduate students at the Grenfell campus. She can link you with appropriate contacts, whether it's at Grenfell or within the School of Graduate Studies. So it's another key contact, Nada, and each of the programs you can see that here on the left are described, and the contact information for each program would be provided at our graduate programs webpage. Last slide, some of our past graduates, and we're really excited about where people have ended up, whether this is Jason Dicker on the left, who's now working with the Nunatsiavut government. He studied caribou and caribou management and working with in Nunatsiavut, and now is working there following his Master of Arts in Environmental Policy degree. We have our first PhD defense we had in 2017 down here at the bottom, And Dr. Mei Wang is now a professor in China. Darian, who's one of our graduates from the Boreal Ecosystem and Agricultural Sciences program, now working with the provincial government in her field. She did research related to bats and bat populations. And this is our first, at the bottom here, our first cohort that I mentioned of Masters of Fine Arts students. And Richard on the far right top is one of our African Leaders of Tomorrow scholars, who's now at Guelph working on his PhD. So just wanted to end off with the faces of just some of our graduates who are all doing exciting things in their fields. So maybe I'll leave it at that and just leave it open to any questions.
That's a beautiful way to wrap it up. It's always good to have a glimpse at, the real faces that are on the campus doing the work. It gives you an opportunity to, get some connection to say, that person looks just like me, or, they look like they're having lots of fun. That's always important when you're going into grad school, right?
Yes, definitely.
Because it can seem like you're taking on a whole lot of work and stress and strain, but to see all those beautiful smiles, those who have made it across that podium to say, yes, I have finished and I've finished well, and to
Yes.
see that they're pleased with the journey. All right, so I want to go ahead. I really appreciate both presentations from what we have at Grenfell campus and in the Faculty of Medicine. And so I want to kind of go directly into some of the questions that I have here. And one question that tends to come up a lot is about switching academic backgrounds. So at least like from one academic background to another one. So for example, someone may have, say, education undergrad degree, but they just feel maybe Master of Fine Arts is where they want to head. It might seem like a big shift, versus them going on to a Master of Education program. What kind of advice do you give to students who are looking to switch, whether it is from a bachelor's of education to a master's of fine arts, or a master's of education to, say, something within the field of medicine? Like, what kinds of shifts are allowed or would be worth pursuing? Whoever wants to take that one first.
Do you want me to lead off, Anne, or do you want to start? I don't mind jumping in.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, most of our programs are fairly interdisciplinary in nature, so that's good news for people coming from various different backgrounds. The Masters of Fine Arts, they're all competitive, so of course, showing that if you're switching fields, I would say one of the pieces of advice I would have is to be able to convince people that when they're reading your application package that you do have why you're switching fields, that you can show that you're genuinely interested in shifting gears and going down this path, and why. So we have people in our Master of Arts and Environmental Policy program, for example, that come from backgrounds as diverse as history, biology, sociology, political science, and those diverse interests are encouraged, but we do look for an explanation of maybe you're coming from a natural science background, but you've got a number of arts and social science courses in your transcript, in your background. You'll want to highlight that in your application to show that you have some background that could help you in a Master's of Arts, even if your degree was coming from a natural science perspective, or that you're willing to learn, take additional courses. That's another thing that we do sometimes with students if we feel that they don't have the background that they need to succeed in that graduate program. You may take an extra course or two to increase your basic, I guess, foundational understanding. And similarly with the transdisciplinary sustainability degree, it's very diverse. So, and the Masters of Fine Arts there's a portfolio required. So again, you wouldn't be coming into it, and it is competitive. So you wouldn't be coming into it from scratch with no arts background at all. But just because maybe your undergraduate isn't in arts, but you have an artistic experience within the arts, you can demonstrate that through your portfolio. So I think that the science programs would have stronger requirements in terms of a science background, but again, maybe you've got a strong science background in courses despite having a degree in the arts, and you can certainly demonstrate that in your application and why it would make sense for you to switch.
Excellent. That gave a bit of insight that you can tap into bits and pieces of your academic or even professional past. But so in the case of the Faculty of Medicine now with the pandemic, a lot of people are probably interested in things like immunology and suddenly decide this is something I want to explore. What do you say for someone who doesn't necessarily have a background in medicine, but is thinking whether because they've watched a movie or they feel they can make a difference, want to explore a totally different field?
Yeah, thanks, Denise. I think, Kelly did a good job describing, that some forward thinking is required. So, that transition is what we would want from students if they're choosing a path that they're more passionate about, that they see themselves going. I mean, we want to encourage that, absolutely. But they would need to think about, how competitive is it where I'm trying to direct myself? What are the needs? How would I express that, in my letter of interest to potential supervisors, for instance? And I do want to talk about supervisor bottlenecks a little bit. So, we encourage people to follow their passion and to have a rationale behind that. And diverse perspectives is probably one of the best features of graduate studies, that most people don't have a straight path, and we expect that. But there would need to be some, I guess, commitment to preparations for success in graduate school, assuming that they're going to do a 180 and come full circle as to what they want to do and why. And maybe that would be some time spent volunteering. Maybe that would be some time spent working on a literature review. Maybe that would have to prepare themselves to step in rather than just stepping in, because again, I think that the application pressure for the programs is very high, and I'm not sure that students maybe coming from away or applying from away understand the limitations of the number of spots. So, that just raises the bar and raises the bar and raises the bar for entry, not to discourage that entry, but to show that they're ready for entry. So, again, I just want to be realistic here about what students face when they apply, sort of like a cold call email, very challenging. And that it takes some time to develop those relationships, for instance, with the immunology and infectious disease supervisor, to say, you know what, I am really thinking this is my thing. Here's what I'm thinking. Get that conversation going. And it might not be a conversation over a few weeks in order to make the next admission deadline. It might be a conversation over a year to decide where you fit and why it's for you. So, I think it is a big step, and an even bigger step if you're changing fields. Absolutely no discouragement intended, but preparation for and alignment to, what the opportunities are, I think is important.
I really like how you mentioned that, it can be competitive and sometimes enough professors aren't available to supervise everyone who wants to apply for admission. Uh, is is it a situation where you need to secure a supervisor before you get into any of these programs?
I just won't mind following up a little bit there. I think that that's probably the biggest limitation, particularly for students who may not have come from a more university undergraduate programs, to understand, is that because we in medicine, we have a mandatory stipend policy to make sure that students who are coming to our programs have some financial support from SGS and, typically from supervisor grants, to make sure that they can have a living support while they're working full-time on their studies. So that is a limitation that they might not appreciate, but of course they appreciate once they're here. So it raises the bar to enter the program, but once they're in the program, it offers that support to make sure they can concentrate on their studies. So, it's a little bit of a works both ways, I guess, but we really encourage that. We want to make sure that students have financial support in order to not be worried about how they're going to exist in this environment of rentals and groceries and transportation and tuition, while they're trying to, really, I guess, carve themselves out as to who they are and what they want to pursue. So I'm not sure if
Excellent,
I off
excellent.
tangent there, but you can just ask again.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we don't know the reasoning behind a decision or a kind of restriction or limitation, but when you understand that, it's creating a cushion for you for when you finally land into this spot to say, I'm pursuing this program,
Yeah.
knowing that provisions are there. It's so important.
Yeah, and if you're in, you're in. I mean, we are all behind the student. We are trying to create supports, making sure, checking in, so it is the biggest barrier, I would say, in medicine to acquire that spot. And then once you're in that spot, we will go 100% to make sure that students have a good experience.
Excellent. What do you say for Grenfell campus?
I would agree. It's not impossible to be accepted without a supervisor already having agreed to take you on. We do review all of the application files, but the chances of you getting an acceptance are much, much greater with a relationship already established with a supervisor who will advocate for your behalf, on your behalf, for example, during the application review process.
Right.
Most supervisors will only have a limited number of seats available in their programs as well. So kind of a cold call application is not likely to land you in those few seats. Often it's much better to reach out ahead of time and try to establish a relationship and have somebody agree to accept you. Some of our programs do require supervisor funding as well, so that was a great point. And even if they don't, having additional supervisor financial support for not only for your stipend perhaps, but also if your work involves costs like software you might need or travel. So no, those are questions to ask too of potential supervisors, what kinds of supports they have for you. But it's strongly advised in all of our programs to have made that contact ahead of time, certainly.
Excellent. In line with that, I've dropped in the chat a website that we have here at School of Graduate Studies about how to find a research supervisor. So it's there for you to access in the chat. Have a look at it. We have videos there with lots of advice, tutorials, different links explaining to you how to find a supervisor from all those available in the faculties or the departments you're looking to get enrolled in, how to contact that supervisor, the kinds of questions to ask them. And this kind of prep work is essential if you're going to secure those coveted spots, right? Okay,
I
now
even say
what
more
I
than that, Denise. I
go
mean,
ahead.
many really well articulated emails, and some not so well. Some asking me to do the work for them. Uh, I can't even reply to those hardly because if I get 50 a day asking me to do the work, I think that's a misunderstanding, and I think that maybe we SGS and the university could do a little bit better job helping students understand, because you're right, I think the understanding is really important. And so then the beautifully articulated message, I would hope that supervisors say, this is really interesting, like it's really amazing how connected you are with what I'm doing here and your interest. Let's have this conversation carry forward. I don't have a spot for 2 years. Is that okay? I mean, I think that we need to get the right fit, because the right student in the right position is those beautiful faces at the end, right? It is those wonderful stories, and we're so excited for what those folks are going to do. But not having the right fit often can be troublesome. So, we want to make sure that students and supervisors see themselves as working as colleagues essentially through that graduate education. And that just does take time. And that's a really important thing, I think, for students to understand.
Uh,
Great point.
sit,
Yeah.
yeah,
Do your research before you send those emails.
yes.
Make a direct link with the supervisor and their research show that you've done your homework
Not
versus
a
just
shallow link
saying,
either. Yeah,
yeah,
and not a shallow link, not a clear
yeah.
cut and paste from a PubMed article. It's just, it's not enough to express your genuine interest in where you want to be and why. And so that's just my words.
Excellent, excellent. So if you didn't think you needed this resource that we have on the page for finding a research supervisor, you just heard it for yourself. You will be filtered out to the junk mail very quickly if you don't put your presentation together well, if you haven't seriously seen where it is you have a genuine interest in the same research areas as the supervisor you're approaching, make sure everything lines up and that it is a good fit before you send out any emails. And I think the biggest tip I got there was don't copy and paste. Make sure it's a personalized, you know, reach that you're making to a professor to say, you know, I've really explored your work. I see where it connects with my interests, and this is where we align. Amazing. Now, is it possible that uh, a student could explore graduate level work either through programs offered at Grenfell campus or the Faculty of Medicine that are course based? Is everything research intensive, or are there more professionally oriented programs available to students? Whether it be because that's their area of interest, being more professionally oriented, or because supervisors aren't available. Go ahead.
Start in.
I can field that one. So all the biomedical type programs are thesis-based, so will require a research component. There are several course-based programs in the Community Health and Humanities Division. So the Master of Health Ethics offers a research paper-based Master of Health Ethics. So there's different streams within the MHE that students can choose. The diploma programs are course-based in clinical epidemiology, and community health and humanities. And students sometimes start that way and then will transition, even though there's still a screening process and application process to be placed in those programs. There is an opportunity, if you're in the program doing the courses, you can actually start connecting with supervisors and transition to the master's. So that's one entry point for students that actually works well for students and supervisors. And then the MPH programs are entirely, they're not entirely course-based, they're in person. Courses only, it's a very heavy course load, so full-time students are doing 12 courses plus a practicum all within a year. It's a unique model across Canada. It seems to get a lot of popularity because it is a one-year program, but it's very intensive, as you can imagine, going from 6 plus the practicum all in a year. But the application pressure is very high, so something like 400 to 500 applications per year for approximately 20 spots.
Wow. So this is why it's so important to put together a good application. So if you haven't checked out our grad apply page, I highly recommend that you do so. There are step-by-step guidelines, tutorials, and everything to explain to you how to put together that application. So you just might be one of the 20 golden students that get selected for these choice spots. What do you say, Dr. Bowden, about persons who might want to look at a more professional route and look after, say, course-based programs?
Well, we do have the 1-year Master of Arts in Environmental Policy, which I mentioned, that does, it still includes both an internship and a research paper. So there's a research element to it, but less intense than the 2-year thesis option. So that exists now. The Master of Management, which, as I mentioned, is still in development, will be professional course-based online program. So once that's available, that would be the other option at Grenfell campus.
Excellent, excellent. So basically, while being able to secure a supervisor is essential, there are a few alternatives for someone who may either not want to do anything research intensive or can't get a supervisor. Is it possible, though, that one could say get into a program that is course-based and then later on, maybe after a couple semesters, say, you know, I've gotten onto this question that I'd really love to explore in a study, could they then switch to a research intensive program, or is it like you're in, complete what you're doing, and then later explore research? What are their options?
I can speak just briefly to the Master of Arts in Environmental Policy program. People do switch both from a 1-year, thinking, as you say, that they really get interested in the research that they're starting to think about and want to do more in-depth research than a 1-year program would allow them to. So that happens. We also have people switching the other way that think they're interested in doing research and then get into the program and think, yeah, this isn't really for me. I'm not planning to pursue a research career in my future. I think I'll switch from the 2-year to the 1-year. So they have to have support from their supervisors for that, and to apply to the program committee for that switch, but with a good justification. We've certainly allowed that on multiple occasions, and as I say, both ways, from 2-year to 1-year and 1-year to 2-year.
Okay, awesome, awesome. What do you have to say, Dr. Dorward?
Yes, in medicine, so the diploma in clinical epidemiology, students do begin with that course-based program and have the opportunity to transfer to the master's, but again, contingent on finding a supervisor and a research project. And the diploma in community health and humanities, likewise, students move up to the master's, and it is an option if things don't go so great or other life events get in the way, they can revert back and earn the diploma.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, I just want to give just to pause for a moment and give an opportunity for our students who are with us today to maybe drop in the chat what their background is, like what did you do for undergrad, and if there are any particular programs that you're interested in. If you have any questions or you want to give us an idea of what you're looking to explore, then we could speak specifically to your needs and interests. And any other questions that you have, just to drop it into the chat. If you want, you can select either host and presenter or only host, and we will look at those questions and respond to them accordingly. Now, another question that often comes up is about late applications. So you are putting everything together, but you can't get one transcript, or you need a particular test result to go in, and the deadline is coming up. Is it possible to submit a late application and still get in?
My experience is that people generally get their application in on time. I'm not sure that we would certainly consider a late application for a future semester, but they may not have all the pieces by the application deadline. And so I don't know if you can speak to that from a school of graduate studies perspective, but I certainly have seen that where we're waiting for a transcript to come in, even though the application was submitted on time, and we will accept those later pieces. Sometimes it's not this, no fault of the student. They've asked for things well in advance, and the reference letter just didn't come, for example. So I think I would suggest, instead of not applying late, to apply, but not necessarily with all of the, if you're missing a piece, explain that. And get it in as soon as you can.
Okay. So get everything together as soon as possible, and what's outside of your scope of influence, then you give some kind of explanation and let us know what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. How is it for the Faculty of Medicine?
I'd say that there might be different levels of filtering. So for the MPH program, for instance, where there are far many more qualified applicants than spots, I think late application components are a filtering screen. So really, if you know that you're applying to a ultra competitive program, don't leave anything to chance. Give the referees double the time. Do whatever you need to do to make sure everything's ready. Otherwise, you could be potentially looking at another whole year away for the next cycle. Now, some of the programs in medicine are open for intake, so they do not have a deadline on an annual cycle. They will take students in the fall, the winter, or the spring. So all the biomedical programs, and there's also quite a bit of leniency for the community health programs, as long as the supervisor is identified. If the supervisor has identified a student, and we just talked about how hard that match is, then nobody really wants to delay that any further if a match has been made. But for the programs that do have deadlines, Denise, you and I were just talking about them. So MPH is in January, MHE is February 1, and Applied Health Services Research March 1. That's a unique program because it's a collaboration with 3 other universities, UMB, UPI, and St. Mary's. So they have to have a consistent cycle. So yeah, missing components make it hard for committees that are looking at a lot of application pressure to give a lot of leniency. So I would tend to put it on the student to say, you know what, don't let that even come up. Especially if one of those hard deadline programs. But other ones are more lenient. They will, wait for things to come and just put you in the next term. That's okay.
Okay, so basically, when you're looking at a competitive program, then get it in on time. All right, so I see one question here. Is it possible that after getting the admission offer, one could be prevented to travel due to COVID-19 restrictions? Um, okay, the so this individual is in a background where there's difficulty hearing our responses. I am going to drop it in the chat that the replay will be available if you have trouble hearing. Uh, uh, does anyone want to respond to our new, the new travel guidelines or the restrictions that have been lifted and concerns that our international students may have?
I don't
Yes,
mind speaking to that. We understand. I mean, you know, there's a lot of chaos going around related to trying to keep life moving on a schedule in the face of the pandemic, and we've processed a lot of deferrals. You know, if situations are changed and the student needs to change their admission timeline, we'll work with them.
Okay. So basically, if they're unable to travel, deferrals are available.
Or a remote start. I mean, really depends on the program, like what offering could they actually get going with the courses, starting, you know, on time and just arrive to Newfoundland at a time that can be organized by the internationalization office. You know, it's going to be a case by case discussion,
Yes.
I would say.
So basically, whatever scenario pops up, get in touch with your graduate officer and discuss what exactly is the best solution. So I'm going to go ahead and drop into the chat for everyone the link to the page where we list the contact information for all our graduate officers. Whatever program you're interested in, select that link. Even before you submit your application, you may get in touch with the graduate officer responsible for that program and find out from them uh, any program specific questions or any kind of special case scenario that you may be facing and have them give you those details. Um, uh, the question about the replays will be posted on the Explore Grad Studies website. I'm just going to drop that in the chat just in case they still are unable to hear. But while I handle that in the chat box, any other questions are welcome either in the Q&A panel or in the chat box. And I know we're almost out of time, so I want to put it to both Dr. Dorward and Dr. Voden. What a piece of advice that you think is essential for anyone looking to explore graduate studies, whether at Grenfell or within the Faculty of Medicine? If you want to give, oh, these are my top 3 tips, or you want to give, this is my golden advice that I only give to my best students, whatever it is that you think you'd like to leave as your final words, please do.
Start,
Yeah.
Anne. Well, I would say reach out, and I think that's a message we've already been talking about. But ask people questions. If you're not, talk to other students, for example. We've talked about reaching out to supervisors, which is, I think, you know, one very important tip that we've talked about. But also, and your graduate officers. But another thing that I've seen people do is reach out to current students. Often there's profiles of current students in their research on a program website, or you through word of mouth. A lot of our students come to us through word of mouth, so they know another student that's done the program before. That's another important source of advice for you. I think, you know, both if you want to know more about the program or how best to craft your application, given their knowledge of the program. So yeah, that would be my number one piece of advice is just don't be afraid to reach out, and do reach out if you have any questions to help make sure your application is as strong as possible. Ask people to review it, for example, your statement of interest, including your potential supervisors, but perhaps others as well, others that you trust to advise you on academic matters, your current, you know, your former academic supervisors, for example. So take the time to do a great job of your application and reach out with any questions and for advice.
So are you saying there are real caring people living behind these websites who
Yes.
who are like going to answer to our emails with questions about, what do I do? Like there's a real person there.
Yes, and if you don't get answers, email again. And I'm guilty. I get hundreds of emails in a day, and I do my very best to get back to people, but sometimes they get lost in the email. And I actually have a disclaimer on my email that says, if you don't hear from me, please don't hesitate to email me again. It won't be a bother. It'll be appreciated because sometimes the emails get lost. So that's another point I would say. Try again.
Excellent. So
If you
don't
first
take
don't
it
succeed.
personal, persist and get in touch with
That's
someone
right.
until you get an answer. Awesome. Uh,
Yes. And we'll try our best to get back to you quickly though. But yeah.
okay. Before you give your golden advice, Dr. Darwood, there is a question regarding the MPH. If a student has completed the 1 year MPH, would they be eligible to move on to a PhD after?
I think that that would have to be a discussion based on their entire experience and the PhD supervisor. What might happen is they might be accepted as a master's student with the expectation that they would transfer to the PhD. So it really depends on, PhD in what? Is it truly aligned with the MPH background, or is it something totally different? So I think that that would just have to be a conversation about what the student wants, how the supervisor sees it working forward, and then maybe it would be a master's entry with transfer. Don't know.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, golden advice time.
Yeah, golden advice. So I did put the Medical Graduate Student Society Facebook link there in the chat. Is that visible, Denise? I'm sorry, I can't hear you right now.
Oh, sorry. Just select the drop down and go to click everyone, and then we should be able to see it.
So as opposed to all attendees. Aha, there we go.
Yes.
So this is a social site advertising certain things. You may or may not get a message back from a student who can advise you on your academic career, but I think it's still worth a chance, particularly when Dr. Vodden talked about contacting students. You can see it now, I hope.
Yes, yes, it's
Okay,
there. Thank you.
I guess golden advice is really reflection on students and what they want. And I think Memorial is a gem, but I also want students to think about what's best for them, and they might need to cast their net quite wide, to achieve their goal. So if Memorial is their goal, I think they need to do quite a bit of work and thinking about how this could happen, why they want to be here, who they want to be with, what their goals are, and share that honestly in that messaging. And that's the messaging that I think is the top tier messaging that's actually going to get a reply that says, this is awesome, but I don't have spots right now, or this is awesome, let's talk more. So I know it's hard to do because students are nervous and they write very formally. They don't want to overkill the email. They're probably getting advice not to reveal too much, but there's some sort of strategy there to try and engage with that faculty member to say, I'm really interested in your program and I really want to join this program. I'm flexible on timing, that kind of thing. A lot of students say, look, I want this in 2 weeks, and it's just not realistic. So I guess self-reflection, making goals, and working to reach those goals, using the supports that Memorial has to offer, trying to get advice about how to write those emails and make those first points of contact. But once you're part of this community, you are absolutely part of this community, and we will do everything we can to make your experience great. But getting into the community, I think, is really a lot on the student to make the best pitch.
Excellent, excellent. And I see, Dr. Voting, you dropped a link to the Grad Student Society at Grenfell there.
Yes, great idea. That would be a good point of contact to find students to talk to.
Yes, excellent, excellent. I'm going to drop into the chat just one moment. Copy the link to our grad apply page. So if you've never looked at it and seen what the minimum admission requirements are for the School of Graduate Studies, step-by-step instructions, video tutorials on how to get the best application in, then go ahead, click that link, and you'll be able to access that information. If you're still trying to figure out which of these programs, because both Dr. Voden and Dr. Dora shared a long list of awesome programs, which direction do I head? You can go to our programs page and look through all the different web pages that are designated for each program. You will get all the details you need, what each program involves, what the admission requirements are, what you will need to do to complete those programs. Everything that's related to each of these programs is there in detail. So check it out. And if you're still a little bit confused, like you've heard before, get in touch with someone. Send an email, ask the questions, and find out where to go. And of course, something that hasn't been brought up in this session, unlike many others, is what it will cost you and whether or not there's funding. Dr. Dorward already mentioned making sure that one doesn't have to stress about finances once you finally get into the Faculty of Medicine. But even for those who may not be going to that route, we have other forms of funding available: scholarships, grants, assistantships, which is employment offered through the School of Graduate Studies. And you can explore all of that by going to our fees and funding page. That link has also been placed into the chat. And if you haven't already clicked on these links, whether it is the MUN Grad Grad Student Society Facebook page from the medical graduate students, or you're looking at the website for the Grenfell Graduate Student Society, all these pages, click them now. Let them open in your browser. So when we end the event and the WebEx window closes, you don't lose them and like, oh, where are all those messages in the chat? Click them now. Let them pop open, and when this event ends, you still have them open in your browser. So that's just my little virtual tip for you, right? So click them now and view them later. Of course, we talked about the deadlines. Don't miss the deadlines. You may be going up for a program that has hundreds of people applying for a spot and there are only a handful. So take a note of the deadline. And I see this question: there aren't any age restrictions for admission. If you can apply, then you can expect that your application will be treated equally. We don't have any discrimination according to age. You don't have a cutoff for how old you could be. Okay, so Dr. Dorad is saying copy and paste the chat. Okay, so copy all these links and paste them. That's another tip for virtual events. All right, so that is it. If there is anything else that you want to drop before these last few minutes, the time is yours.
Just thanks from me for the opportunity and for those that are online for joining.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kelly. It was a pleasure to see you. And thanks, Denise. What great facilitation job.
It was
Yes,
my pleasure.
great.
All right, so I want to thank you all for joining us today. Please be sure to visit the Become a Graduate Student website at mun.ca if you want more information about graduate studies at Memorial University. And I'm also going to drop into the chat our email address if you want direct contact with anyone here at the School of Graduate Studies. It's sgs@mun.ca. We try to respond to all communication within 24 hours. Send us an email, whether you're looking at something in the Faculty of Medicine, at Grenfell campus, or anywhere else in Memorial University. Send us an email. We'll respond and support you from application to when you come to the campus and knock on our door and say, hey, I remember you were on that webinar. So we're hoping that we will get to meet you all soon. Whenever you need help, just reach out. As you've been told multiple times during this session, send a message. If you don't get a response, send another one, and we are happy to support you. Of course, like Dr. Dodd pointed out, no copy and pasting. There are real people behind these web pages. So make sure that you have a genuine interest when you're approaching a supervisor, and take advantage of the resources we have made available to securing your perfect supervisor for your research interests and to build your graduate career. So thank you again for joining us. It was a pleasure hosting you. And we hope to see you here in St. John's or in Grenfell campus sometime soon. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you.